All right, welcome back to Trainwreck Games. It has been a while, obviously, but I get to say something that I don't think I've ever gotten to say on this channel before, and that is I have finished a game. It's a little dusty. It's been a while since the last update. I don't know how long it's been. You can tell from the dust that this has been set up for a bit here in my dungeon basement, but yeah, I finished it the other day. Did I play it correctly? Absolutely not. Did I play it optimally? Definitely not. But did I have a good time? And the answer is yes. You can sort of see the end state here. Well, first of all, you have a couple of these little blue things. What I wanted to show here is, I think I might have mentioned at some point, there's like this orange line here, and that's sort of like a wall that the Americans can't cross until a certain date. Unless you get a card that triggers it earlier. That's the case. It triggered on July 27, 28. And so then the Americans are able to, pour further west. Around July 3rd, 4th, the reason why I have a square here is because that's when things really started to, I don't want to say turn around for the Allies, but that's when it was becoming clear the Allies were starting to gain momentum in my mind. So they started to really outnumber the Germans. They started to really be able to push in, starting to get up the middle. They were starting to make what I felt like was real progress. Not that I'm an expert, but and then in the end of the day, the Americans, or the Allies, man, there's so much dust. This game's been on my table for so long. They captured 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ports. This port up here is actually 2, but you can see the units held in. They were making their way toward Messina. They held in. Messina is another 2 port. This port here, Augusta, 2 spots, held the whole time. Catania also. This one I feel like that one I should have been able to take, and that was my suboptimal place getting in the way of me taking it. But so at the end of the day, the Allies scored 6 victory points. And then one of the rules is starting on, I think, the August 11th, 12th turn. I don't know if I talked about this, but the Germans can start evacuating armored units, which you can see from this yellow decoration around the movement factor, from Messina. And for every 2 that you get off the board, and I think you can do 2 per turn. So you have a chance to do 2, 4, 6. If you're really good, you can get 8 off the board, which would, for every 2, you subtract 1 victory point from the Allies. So you have the chance, if you're really, successful with your German armor evacuation, to knock 4 victory points off the Allied total. So I was trying to get this one out, and I don't know if this was my suboptimal play coming back to bite me again, but I couldn't break through and get to Messina, because I think, I believe I have this correct, that zones of control stop movement, even if you have a unit in there to negate it as you would in other games. I think enemy zones of control in this game still affect movement regardless. This armor unit here, I was like, do I get it out? But it was pivotal to holding Augusta, because if that fell, it's like a 2 score port. So I felt like, let me see if I can get this one off. Let me see if, it was, by the time I realized, oh crap, I need to start moving, it was too late. Things are already jammed along this main road along the north. Now, so actually what I was going to do is let's calculate the final tally. Gonna go to the end of you don't really need the dice anymore, so I took that off. But let's just calculate the game. The final tally. We've got winning the game before 11-12. The Allied player achieves a major victory when they have captured and held the following 10. Okay, so if the Allies can get 10 points before the 11th, it's just shut it down right there. So at the end of the game, if the Allied player has 5 victory points, including at least 1 hex of Messina, it's considered an Allied win. So I have 6. I've got 6 minus 1 because I did manage to get 2 units off. So I've got 5 victory points. I didn't get Messina, though. I couldn't get there. So I don't get, let's see, if it's 4 victory points or less. Okay, if the Allies hold 5, but without Messina, it's a draw. So Yeah, so I feel like that's a fair result. I think, again, if I had been a little smarter, like actively playing to win, a couple things could have happened. I think I probably could have maybe gotten Messina or taken another town. This one might have been able to get like 6. Ooh. Man, it's so dusty. Might have been able to get like 6 or 7 victory points. I'm not sure. Maybe 6. But then I, got 2 off. I probably, if I'd been playing smarter again, probably could have gotten more armor off. So I think a draw is where I was going to end up on some level. So now, what did I think of this game? First and foremost, this game is definitely not hard. There's no reason for it to have taken as much time as it did. So it's hard to say how long it should take. Like when I would actually sit down and, focus on it, the turns moved quickly. Like they moved, I would say, quite quickly. So I don't, like in a lot of games like this, I feel like whoever's playing the Axis, you have to just be willing to like, hey, you know what? I'm just here to have a good time. It's really, the interesting side in this game, I believe, is probably the Allies. Unless, like I'm sure there are people that, find, putting on a rigid defense with a retreat, whatever you want to call it, that might find that, that might find that interesting. I don't know. But it's not like you're driving the narrative so much, if that makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense. So I think one side has to be willing, like, yeah, you know what? I'll do that. Like this is, my time to provide the resistance, provide the opposition, and just go from there. I thought the game, honestly, like I was saying, the game is pretty simple, and there were definitely things that I did not do correctly, but I don't think that's the problem with the game. So one thing I know that I often forgot to do is use artillery as part of defense. But I did it as an equal opportunity offender, so I feel like that's kind of a wash, but that's definitely something I didn't always remember to do. I wasn't sure if you get a bonus for having like combined arms, like a tank and an infantry. I always assumed you needed those two to be in the same hex attacking together. Like if you look right here, you got a tank and an infantry below it. I assumed that's what that meant. I didn't know if it meant like, say like up here where you might have a tank attacking, but you have an infantry flanking. I didn't know if that was supposed to include that. So for the sake of, I never included it. Something I probably forgot on more than one occasions was some of the weather effects when it impacted movement. We didn't have too many heavy rain, but I imagine 1 or 2 times I probably moved units when the Axis should have had a problem or the Allies should have had a problem, depending on the weather. The air game, you got these Allied air units, decoys. Obviously was a little bit less interesting being a solo experience. What I would do is I would just randomly choose it and then hope it had what I wanted. But because of that, what it ended up making me do was sort of like maybe overcommit. Like I might put 4 here, knowing that the Axis could only put 3 and hoping that you know what I'm saying? And it's only because I wasn't, it wasn't like the sort of bluffing and poker game that it could have been. So, but that's okay. That's perfectly fine. The cards, I thought some of them were really interesting. Some of them like, give little bonuses here and there. I thought the cards were a nice touch, not too complicated. Overall, again, like the game was definitely not complicated. The game definitely moved. It's like 8-10 pages of rules, so it's a really easy game to master. I feel like the actual getting into the game itself, I felt, not that I'm an expert on, the invasion of Sicily, but it felt Sicily-ish because, trying to get up the middle, like it's hard. You got these roads that sort of make you squiggle through hexes. They're the only way for vehicles to get to the northern part of the island half the time. You can move around the outsides, obviously very easily, but, that doesn't help you very often. Trying to get around here, trying to cut the Germans off, this was a real quagmire, which I think is probably how it was a little bit. So I really did feel like this was a Sicily game in a pretty light, quick package. I genuinely had a good time, and if someone were to ask me, would you play it again? Here for the channel on the solo table, definitely not. And I don't want that to be some kind of statement on the game itself, because there's just too many other games to play. But I do feel like if I can get myself to focus, this is the level of game I should be much better equipped to handle and cover. Simple, small footprint, very easy to grasp, concepts that are pretty much universal to most simpler SCS level war games. But I will say this is kind of the weird thing. The nice thing about this, it matters to finish a game. Like I've done Panzer Grenadier that got flooded out. I did the Stalingrad, Battle for Stalingrad. I wish I had finished that, but just time got away from me. And that was much like this, but this had the lower complexity that allowed me to sort of more easily say, you know what, let me just take a turn. It's been like 4 weeks, but let me just take a turn or two. That wasn't always the case with Battle for Stalingrad. And I genuinely like that as well. But all in all, it's kind of interesting because, I do have the OCS Sicily 2 game. Its footprint is not much bigger than this, if it's bigger than this at all. And I wonder how much it would matter to have the extra cruft of managing supply. Because one thing that did start to happen later in the game, earlier in the game, like you got forces here, you can't go too far west, you're sort of moving up a little bit, trying to get into position. I had plenty of supply points. I was always like, I'm maxed out, I don't know what to do. Can I go? Yeah, you can go up over 10, right? I had plenty of supply points. Later in the game, again, without, counting T chips and stuff like that, there were some turns where I was like, well, I can only attack twice, so that means I'm not going to be able to get to do this or to do that. And so I felt like there was a squeeze on supply the more I wanted and needed to do, which I feel like, isn't that what supply is sort of trying to accomplish? And I'm always skeptical of, I've played CS Burma and I liked it, but always a little skeptical of that in-depth. It was a scenario in Burma. It's not like I was busting out the full thing, but I'm always a little skeptical of the full supply mechanic in OCS. And when I see like a little 13-page game like this start to put supply pressure on me when it counts most without a lot of those mechanics, I'm like, does that mean anything? Probably not. What do I know? But in the end, I think, so would I play this again? Like if I had somebody, had somebody local is like, hey, you want to, hang out, get some wings and, that I would do, because I feel like you could play this in a day pretty easily. And it wouldn't be taxing your brain too much about like pouring through the rule book, so you could sort of enjoy hanging out. But when it came time to make your turn, you'd be like, okay, let me think about this. The rules don't get in the way. So in that regard, I do think it's definitely worth, if you're looking for something light on Sicily for your solo table. Again, this will not eat up the table for a long time, and it will not make you sit there brain burning on the rules themselves. And I do feel like, again, like I said, I'm not an expert on the invasion of Sicily, but I do feel like it was Sicily-like when I was playing it. The things that I sort of know. It was, like I said, it was tough to maneuver when I needed to go on the inside of the island. As I just mentioned, the supply crunch started to come right when I needed it most. Yeah, and like I mentioned in the beginning, this is by DDH Games, which is like Danny Holt, and I think he's got like a big Sicily game coming using his Battle for Normandy system, and I'll be really curious to see what that's like, because what I've heard about that system is that it's a playable monster. And I probably said that in the first session of this, and what I've always taken that to mean is that there might be a lot of bits to manage, but the rules you use to manage them are perfectly manageable. Well, I'm repeating myself, but you know what I mean? Like, they're easy to handle. They're not going to overwhelm you in like a world at war, or, like a 150-page rule book or something. So I appreciate that. And it kind of makes me kind of curious what he does. I assume that's going to have a lot more Chrome. I can't remember if I P500'd that one. It's been on the P500 forever. I don't know what's going on with it. And it's to the point where I don't know if I in one of my panics, I canceled that one. I mean, because you know how it is. Sometimes you look at your P500 list and you're like, oh my God, I've got like 17. And you're like, okay, what am I doing? Might have been one of those moments. But I genuinely think this was like a really nice, bite-sized little experience that I think, I don't know how hard it is to acquire. I don't like it's because if it's DDH Games, I'm assuming it's self-published on some level. So I don't know if he's got I have no idea. It's been a long time since I've gotten this one, I think. So it's yeah, so I don't know what its availability is. But I do know that if you're looking for something really and I know that like there are people, I see them on like some of the Discords for various war game podcasts. So, people like, I'm just going to take something to solo while I'm on a business trip. I feel like this could easily fit that bill. It packs really light. It's just in a Ziploc bag. Not that many counters. The setup, for me, the setup was a little, anytime you have to deal with like, and I don't know what, like you're dealing with like these little hex numbers and things have to go precisely where they have to go. It can be a little time consuming. I imagine people with more experience than I have could probably have a system in place to, I don't know, to organize it ahead of time and get it going. But yeah, so it's also interesting because, at the time of this recording, I'm starting to look at, okay, like I've done it. Like there's something to getting a game done under your belt that makes you think like, hell yeah, like I can do this again. Is there something else now if I can, make the time set aside, like now I've gotten a little bit of a groove. Should I be jumping into something? The danger is you're like, oh, I can do anything. You get invincible feeling. And then you start throwing down, World in Flames 5th edition because it's a little more smaller of a footprint. And then you say, hey, you're insane. Don't do that. But at the time of this recording, I don't know if I want to wait this long, but I know that GMT, I'm recording in late September of 2025, GMT is about to charge in early October for Unconditional Surrender Western something. And I'm really looking forward to that. I love Unconditional Surrender. If you get into the idea of like playable monster, like to me, that sort of fits the bill. It's very elegant in my mind in a lot of ways. I will say I got tripped up in it, like trying to do like North Africa supply, but I imagine like any game when you're trying to do supply across the Med is going to start getting tricky. So that's just me and my inexperience, tripping me up. Like I'm sure like more experienced war gamers are like, oh no, you get the hang of it. But that kind of stuff always intimidates me. I didn't take advantage enough of cutting people off supply with the Germans. Like if you do, it lowers their defense by 1. But I believe like, so even though like I've got these guys surrounded, I want to say that they're in supply because they're on a port. So like, I think you start getting like these little strongholds, right? But I started to get a little better about cutting off units. That's something I'm always really bad at as a whole. But yeah, at the end of the day, I think, also going forward, like I started thinking to myself, like maybe the nice thing about a system like OCS is that the rule book is so good. So even though it might weigh in at like 40 pages, it's very easy to find what you want, and it's actually not that complicated. So it makes me kind of wonder, like, are there games that might be this size footprint or a scenario that that might fit the bill to go on the table next? And at the same time, though, like, I've recently gotten a lot of old school tactical. Like, the thing I like about... So the thing about this is, even though this is like a relatively low density counter kind of stuff, there's still a lot of counters, and you start to wonder, like, have I done anything with this unit in like 7 turns? Probably not. Does it matter? I don't know. You start to lose, like, you're just like, you know what? I don't want to think about every single unit. Like, is this guy, if he gets here and then here, is he really going to impact me? Or if he gets to here by the end of the game? So I sort of start to be like, whatever, I can't be bothered. And so when I see, like, some people like throwing up, like, how was it? Kev Sharpie did like Case Blue or something like that, or definitely like some of the big East Front series, because that's a series I really am curious about, the East Front series. I just look at it and I'm like, man, there's like, gonna pull numbers like hyperbolically out of my ass. There's like 12,000 units on the board. Like, does it even matter what one of them does, or how do you keep that all in your head? And the idea to me with like a tactical game is that the narrative is more focused. So in my mind, it's a lot more clear, if that means anything. And so it makes it a little easier to be like, okay, so yeah, no, I see what I was trying to do here was, and how these units can all contribute to that. Where here in sort of the bigger picture stuff, I just feel like there's stuff that gets left on the sidelines because, like this unit here probably could have helped somewhere, but at some point you've got so many artillery and you can only bring so many artillery units to bear. Basically, it, like, if you're attacking, say, with, like, that's a 3 and a 5, so that's 8. So if you're attacking with 8 units, you can bring 8 points of artillery to bear. At some point, you hit that number pretty quick, like 4 or 7, like, boom, you got it, right? Because they're sort of both in range. So, it's hard to say, if it would have made a difference. But I definitely, especially when I'm, so lax about like focusing on the game, I'm just like, I don't even know what these guys need to do, and it seems like whatever's happening over here is mostly being covered, so just whatever, who cares? And it's a way to sort of make the the turns go pretty quick at the end, because I just like, I will tell you, like, the last couple of turns, because only certain things mattered, like it doesn't matter. I'm not going to take Trapani, so I'm not even going to bother doing that. Like, can I get into Messina? No, I couldn't get into Messina. Could I get 1 point here? No. Could I get this? It got very, very narratively focused, which helped, like, really move it along at the end. So I appreciate that. But yeah. So yeah, to wrap it all up, I really enjoyed Husky 8 from Danny Holt Games. I'm really glad I got this to the table. I know it's not one that I've seen around a lot. So I don't know if anybody, finds this interesting, but it was definitely a fun time for me to play. And it was a little bit off the beaten path as far as the game goes, even though like the subject matter might not be. And, yeah. So I think to wrap this all up, I'm just going to do this. It kind of feels good to do that. Like, I've been so paranoid about bumping the table, not doing anything. I've got new lights, so I've been like trying to cautiously, not have like my fat ass hit the table in a weird way while I'm trying to position it and not, bump into things. Now it doesn't matter, because I can just take this all apart. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with this. Like, it doesn't take up much space, but at the same time, like, I don't know. Like, I don't know if I need to keep it. Yeah. Anyway, for the people that check this out, I apologize for the amount of time it took. My intention was to have made a couple of updates when these blue squares were, and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to burn through the rest of the game. I was just like, I'm just going to go for it. But I appreciate everybody who checks this out. I'm really looking forward to, again, the Western Battles, or whatever it's called, from Unconditional Surrender, but I might try and figure out at least something else to poke at a little bit in the meantime, because that, even though it charges, it might still take a while to get here. But yeah. So to everyone, thanks for checking this out. This has been Trainwreck Games, and we'll be back soon. Thanks again. Take care.